The chill that seeped into Serafina's bones had nothing to do with the winter air outside. It was the icy silence of the house, a silence that had become her constant companion since the morning she woke to find half of Leo's closet empty. No note. No argument. Just a gaping void where his presence used to be. A void that mirrored the one now forming in her chest. For 2 weeks, she'd walked through their meticulously curated home, a monument to their 20-year marriage, and felt like a ghost in her own life. She'd called, texted, pleaded for an explanation, only to be met with Leo's curt, pre-recorded voicemail message, "I'm unavailable." Unavailable. The word echoed in her mind, a cruel joke. He was available enough to pack his bags, available enough to disappear, but not available enough to offer a single word of explanation to the woman who had built a life, a family, and a thriving business with him. The betrayal was a physical ache, but the mystery was a corrosive acid, eating away at her sanity. Until today. Today, the mystery had been solved, not by a confession, but by a cold, official letter from their bank, informing her that all joint accounts had been drained. Every penny. Her carefully constructed world, already teetering, now crashed around her. The anger, sharp and incandescent, finally cut through the grief. Leo wanted to play dirty? Fine. She took a deep, shuddering breath, her fingers already flying across her phone screen. He wanted to disappear? She'd make sure he had nowhere to land. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The stark silence of the house had become Serafina's tormentor, a constant reminder of Leo's unexplained exit. It wasn't the kind of silence born from peace, but from absence, a void that had swallowed half of his closet and, seemingly, a piece of her soul. Every morning she woke with a jolt, half expecting to hear the familiar sounds of him in the shower, or the gentle clinking of his coffee cup against the granite counter. But there was nothing. Just the echoing stillness of a home that felt suddenly too large, too empty, too full of ghosts. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of unanswered calls, unread texts, and pleas whispered into the void of his unavailable voicemail. The audacity of it, she thought. A bitter laugh bubbling up her throat. Unavailable for a conversation, for a goodbye, for a basic human explanation. But perfectly available to pack his meticulously folded shirts and disappear into the ether. Serafina had always prided herself on her composure, her ability to navigate complex situations, with a cool head and a steady hand. She was the architect of their family's finances, the quiet force behind Leo's public-facing charisma. For 2 decades, she'd been the bedrock, the one who anticipated problems and engineered solutions before anyone else even knew there was an issue. But this was a demolition, not a mere problem. And she was standing amidst the rubble, utterly blindsided. The grief, initially a dull ache, had sharpened into a piercing pain. But it was the mystery that truly tormented her. What had happened? Had he met someone else? Was he in trouble? The scenarios spun endlessly in her mind, each more terrifying than the last, until her thoughts became a tangled mess of fear and confusion. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. Every dream was a distorted replay of his absence, every waking moment a desperate search for answers. She'd sought counsel quietly at first from a few trusted friends, carefully omitting the more embarrassing details of his silent departure. They offered platitudes, sympathy, and theories, none of which brought her any closer to the truth. Men can be cowards, Serafina. Her friend Anya had commiserated over tea, her eyes filled with pity. He probably just couldn't face you. But Leo, for all his flaws, had never been a coward. Manipulative, yes. Self-absorbed, absolutely. But a coward? He faced down hostile investors, aggressive competitors, and demanding clients with an unflappable confidence that sometimes bordered on arrogance. This disappearance felt too calculated, too deliberate, to be mere cowardice. It felt like an escape. Baban. Then came the letter. It arrived with the morning mail, innocuous amidst the bills and junk flyers. A crisp, official envelope from their primary bank, the one where they held their joint checking, savings, and investment accounts. Serafina tore it open with a sigh, bracing herself for another statement filled with impressive figures that now felt meaningless without Leo by her side. But what she read froze her in place, the words like ice shards piercing her fragile calm. Notice of account closure due to zero balance. Her breath hitched. Zero balance? She flipped through the attached statements, her eyes scanning for an explanation, a mistake, anything. But there it was, irrefutable, starkly printed. A series of large, rapid withdrawals over the past few weeks, culminating in a final transfer that emptied every last cent from their joint accounts. Every penny. The life savings they had meticulously built together over 2 decades. The retirement fund, the emergency reserves, all gone. The pain of abandonment was instantly eclipsed by a tidal wave of fury so intense it made her teeth ache. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was an act of war. Leo hadn't just left, he had decimated their shared financial foundation, leaving her utterly exposed. The man she had loved, trusted, and built a life with had stripped her bare, not just emotionally, but financially. He had orchestrated a financial hit, a calculated, devastating blow, delivered with the precision of a trained assassin. And suddenly, the cold, silent void of his absence was filled with a burning, white-hot rage. She clutched the letter, her knuckles white, her body trembling not from fear, but from a newfound, terrifying resolve. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about justice. This was about survival. And Leo, wherever he was about to learn that Serafina, the quiet force, the architect of solutions, was also a master of demolition when pushed to the brink. He thought he could just vanish, taking everything with him, leaving her with nothing but a void and a mountain of legal bills. He was about to find out how wrong he was. She would use every weapon in her arsenal, every carefully laid foundation, every hidden clause she had insisted on, to turn his own game against him. The war had begun. And Serafina, the wounded lioness, was ready to roar. She would freeze every last asset, every secret account, every hidden loophole he thought he had. She would make sure that his financial world, just like hers, turned to zero. Afina, the anger was a potent, clarifying force. It sliced through the haze of grief and confusion, leaving behind a laser-like focus on one objective: finding Leo and reclaiming what was hers. The first call Serafina made wasn't to the police, not yet, but to Marcus, her trusted financial advisor. Marcus had handled their family's wealth for years, overseeing their investment portfolios, their property deeds, and a labyrinth of trusts and accounts that even Leo, with his casual disregard for administrative details, sometimes struggled to fully grasp. He was more than an advisor. He was a confidant, a man who had seen them through market crashes, lucrative deals, and the quiet accumulation of their considerable fortune. "Marcus," she began, her voice strained but steady, the official bank letter clutched in her trembling hand. "I need you to look into something, immediately. All our joint accounts have been drained." There was a stunned silence on the other end, then Marcus's normally calm voice filled with genuine shock. "Drained? Serafina, that's impossible. We have multiple safeguards, layers of protection." "Apparently not enough," she interrupted, her voice gaining strength, the anger fueling her resolve. "Every penny. I have the bank statement here." She relayed the details of the letter, the rapid, suspicious transfers. As she spoke, she could hear him typing furiously in the background, accessing their digital files, cross-referencing account numbers. "Serafina," he said, his tone grim, "this is unprecedented. The last major transfer I authorized from any joint account was 3 months ago, for the down payment on that vacation property in Aspen. Since then, no activity of this magnitude." He confirmed her worst fears. These withdrawals had bypassed his oversight, executed through channels she wasn't even aware of. "How is this possible?" she whispered, her mind racing. "Someone must have forged my signature, or used an old power of attorney, or Leo did it himself," Marcus finished, his voice flat. "He has full access to joint accounts, even without your signature for certain types of transfers, and his financial acumen, when he applies himself, is formidable." The words hit her like a physical blow. Not a mistake, not an oversight. This was a deliberate, calculated act by her husband. The man she had shared a bed, a life, and 2 children with. He's disappeared, she confessed, the dam finally breaking. 2 weeks ago. No word, no explanation. Marcus swore under his breath. This changes everything. If he's vanished and cleaned out the accounts, this is beyond a marital dispute, Serafina. This is a criminal matter. We need to alert the authorities, and we need to freeze every other asset he might have access to, immediately. Every other asset, she repeated, her mind already shifting into problem-solving mode. His personal accounts, the offshore ones we discussed setting up for tax purposes? His business accounts for Sterling Innovations? Absolutely, Marcus affirmed. I'll start the process with our legal team right away. They can issue emergency injunctions, put holds on everything. It will be messy, Serafina, very messy. But it's our only way to prevent him from liquidating everything and disappearing completely. As Marcus began rattling off legal jargon and procedural steps, Serafina's mind drifted back. Not just 2 weeks, but months. She'd been so consumed with launching her new charitable foundation, with their children's burgeoning schedules, with the everyday dance of their busy lives. She hadn't noticed the subtle shifts, the almost imperceptible changes in Leo's routine. He'd been working late more often, citing the demands of the market or critical negotiations for Sterling Innovations, his burgeoning tech firm. He'd become more distant, his answers vague, his eyes often somewhere far away even when they were sitting across the dinner table. She'd attributed it to stress, to the relentless pace of his ambition. She'd convinced herself he was simply focused, perhaps even stressed by the weight of their shared financial empire. But now, in the harsh light of betrayal, she saw it clearly. The groundwork for his escape had been meticulously laid. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. One evening, about 3 months ago, she'd found his laptop open on his home office desk. He was usually so meticulous about security, so she'd paused, a flicker of something unsettling passing through her. It was open to a spreadsheet, a dense array of numbers and financial jargon that didn't immediately make sense to her, despite her own financial acumen. It looked like a series of complex internal transfers, but the headings were obscure, the accounts referenced by code names she didn't recognize. She'd meant to ask him about it, but a child's cry or a sudden phone call had pulled her attention away, and when she returned, the laptop was closed, and Leo was already gone for the night. She dismissed it as work, an internal reshuffling within Sterling Innovations perhaps. Now, she knew. Those obscure codes were likely the aliases for the accounts he had been systematically siphoning their wealth into, preparing for his grand disappearance. The realization was a gut punch. He had been planning this for a long time, quietly, methodically, while she was busy building the very life he intended to abandon and strip bare. He had used her trust, her focus on their shared future, as a shield for his deceit. The anger roared back, hotter than before. He thought he could just vanish, taking everything with him, leaving her with nothing but a void and a mountain of legal bills. He was about to find out that Serafina, the silent partner, the meticulous planner, was capable of a countermove so swift and devastating it would leave him reeling. She had built their financial fortress, and she knew every hidden passage, every secret vault. She would find him, and she would make him pay, every last cent. She would freeze his entire world, just as he had frozen hers. Serafina spent the next few days in a whirlwind of legal and financial activity. Marcus, true to his word, had assembled a team of top-tier attorneys specializing in financial fraud and asset recovery. They moved with the cold, efficient precision of surgeons, dissecting Leo's financial footprint, tracing every digital breadcrumb he'd left behind. The first major victory came swiftly. Emergency injunctions were secured, placing temporary freezes on all known accounts and assets linked to Leo. This included his personal investment portfolios, the substantial trust fund his parents had established, and, crucially, all operational accounts for Sterling Innovations, his booming tech company. The news of Sterling Innovations' frozen accounts sent shockwaves through the tech community. Leo had built the company from a garage startup to a multi-million-dollar enterprise, a gleaming monument to his vision and relentless drive. But now, without access to operational funds, payroll couldn't be met, suppliers couldn't be paid, and critical development projects ground to a halt. The board of directors, initially confused and then furious, demanded answers. Their calls to Leo went unanswered, his unavailable voicemail now a source of collective panic. Serafina knew this would happen. It was a necessary move, a strategic chokehold designed to flush him out. He loved Sterling Innovations more than he loved most people, arguably even more than he loved their children. Freezing his financial lifeblood was the surest way to force his hand. As the legal team worked, Serafina delved deeper into her own meticulous records, cross-referencing old statements, dusting off archived emails, and piecing together the subtle hints she had dismissed as innocuous over the years. She discovered several large, irregular transactions dating back nearly 2 years. Transfers to shell corporations with generic names like Global Ventures LLC or Horizon Holdings Inc. She'd seen them before, tucked away in obscure lines on their tax returns, but Leo had always dismissed them as quote, tax optimization strategies or exploratory investments that were too complex for her to worry about. He had, with casual condescension, told her to, quote, leave the heavy lifting to him. Now, she saw them for what they were, carefully constructed conduits for illicit funds. One particular transfer, a hefty sum of $5 million, had caught her eye. It was routed through a bank in the Cayman Islands, an offshore haven notoriously favored by those seeking to obscure financial trails. She remembered the conversation vividly. Leo had been particularly animated that day, talking about a groundbreaking AI patent he was trying to secure for Sterling, a deal that would, quote, revolutionize the industry. He'd said the Cayman transfer was an expedited payment to a crucial, discreet consultant. She'd accepted it at face value, basking in the glow of his excitement, proud of his ambition. How naive she had been. Marcus, she called, her voice tight with a newfound urgency. I'm looking at old statements. There are significant transfers to offshore entities, specifically one called Azure Capital Holdings, in the Caymans. Do you recognize that name? Marcus's intake of breath was audible. Azure Capital? Serafina, that's not one of our usual partners. That's a very common front for money laundering. And it's notoriously difficult to penetrate. His tone was grave. If Leo routed funds through there, he was trying to make them disappear for good. The realization sent a fresh wave of nausea through Serafina. Money laundering. This wasn't just about betrayal and abandonment. This was about potentially criminal activity. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. But instead of fear, a steel-cold resolve hardened in her eyes. Difficult, but not impossible, right? She challenged. We have the original transfer records, the amounts, the dates. We can follow the digital trail, can't we? Marcus paused, then a flicker of respect entered his voice. It won't be easy, but yes. With the right legal leverage and possibly some international forensic accountants, we might be able to trace it. It will be expensive, and it will be time-consuming, but given the circumstances, the courts will likely grant us the access we need. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The offshore discovery shifted the entire strategy. It transformed Leo's actions from a mere marital dispute with financial implications into a potential federal investigation. This was no longer just about retrieving her share. It was about exposing a sophisticated web of deceit that could bring down Sterling Innovations and ruin Leo's reputation beyond repair. She thought of Leo's unwavering confidence, his casual arrogance, his belief that he was always 10 steps ahead. He had underestimated her. He had underestimated the quiet woman who managed their household, nurtured their children, and built the very financial framework he was now trying to dismantle. He had mistaken her support for subservience, her trust for naivete. While the lawyers began the arduous process of untangling the offshore labyrinth, Serafina took a deep dive into Sterling Innovations' public records. She pored over annual reports, investor calls, and press releases, searching for any anomalies, any hidden clues that might explain Leo's desperate need for such large, untraceable sums. She found nothing obvious. On the surface, Sterling was a picture of success, consistently exceeding revenue targets, lauded for its innovative products. But as she cross-referenced the financial reports with industry news, a tiny discrepancy caught her eye. A major deal with a large government contractor, announced 6 months prior with much fanfare, seemed to have stalled. There had been no updates, no press releases touting its completion, despite its projected multi-million-dollar value. Leo had vaguely attributed the delay to bureaucracy and red tape. But now she wondered, was the offshore money related to this stalled deal? Was he funneling funds out of Sterling, perhaps to cover up a failed venture? Or worse, to line his own pockets from a contract that was never fully executed? The more she dug, the more questions arose, each one weaving a tighter web around Leo. He wasn't just abandoning her. He was running from something far bigger, something deeply ingrained in the very foundation of his business empire. And as she continued her relentless search for answers, a chilling realization settled over her. The man she thought she knew, the man she had loved for 20 years, was a stranger, a phantom. And she was determined to expose him. No matter the cost, she would continue to freeze every account, every asset, every potential escape route. She would follow every lead, no matter how obscure or legally challenging. She would ensure that when his carefully constructed world finally collapsed, he would have nowhere to fall but the cold, hard ground of reality. The demand from Sterling Innovations Board for an emergency meeting was not a request. It was an ultimatum. Serafina, dressed in a sharp, charcoal gray suit that projected an image of calm authority she barely felt, walked into the opulent boardroom feeling a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. This was Leo's domain, the gleaming temple to his ambition, now permeated with a palpable tension that mirrored the storm brewing within her. The directors, an imposing collection of industry titans and venture capitalists, sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces etched with a mixture of confusion, frustration, and mounting anger. Their hurried whispers ceased as she entered, every eye turning to her. Serafina, Chairman Douglas Hayes, a man whose silver hair and deep voice commanded respect, began, his tone a carefully modulated blend of inquiry and impatience. "Thank you for coming. We understand you've been working with legal counsel regarding certain irregularities. But the sudden freeze on all Sterling Innovations operating accounts is catastrophic. Payroll has been missed. Key suppliers are threatening to pull out. Development on Project Chimera has halted entirely. We need answers. Immediately." His gaze was unwavering, challenging her to provide a logical explanation for the chaos that had engulfed their highly profitable company. Serafina took the seat she had chosen, deliberately placing herself at the head of the table, directly opposite where Leo usually presided. It was a subtle assertion of authority, a silent declaration that she was no longer merely Leo's wife, but an active, formidable player in this high-stakes game. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes, gentlemen," she responded, her voice steady, betraying none of the tremor she felt deep inside. "I understand your concern. My actions, drastic as they may seem, were born out of a necessity to protect my family's assets, and by extension, the integrity of this company. Leo's sudden, unexplained departure, coupled with the complete draining of our joint personal accounts, left me with no alternative." A ripple of murmurs spread around the table. Most of the directors knew of Serafina, of course. She was the supportive, elegant wife often seen at company galas, but never involved in the intricate business dealings. To hear her speak with such cool authority, and to learn of Leo's financial betrayal, was clearly unsettling. "Drained accounts?" asked Rebecca Chen, a sharp-eyed venture capitalist known for her ruthless efficiency. "Are you implying Leo embezzled funds from your personal accounts?" "I am stating that all joint accounts were emptied by Leo, without warning or discussion," Serafina corrected, placing a slim folder containing redacted bank statements on the table. "And as these funds were inextricably linked to the initial seed money for Sterling Innovations, my legal team advised that the only immediate course of action to secure any remaining funds was to freeze all associated accounts, including Sterling's. The revelation landed with the force of a bomb. The board members exchanged incredulous glances. Leo, their golden boy, the visionary CEO, a thief? It seemed unthinkable. "This is absurd," blustered Richard Stone, a longtime board member and close friend of Leo's. "Leo would never jeopardize his own company, his legacy. This must be a misunderstanding, a marital dispute blowing out of proportion." "I assure you, Mr. Stone, this is no mere marital dispute," Serafina countered, her gaze hardening. "This is financial destruction. And my investigation, which is ongoing, suggests it extends far beyond our personal finances." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "It appears Leo has been systematically siphoning funds into offshore accounts, funds that appear to be directly linked to Sterling Innovations' revenues, particularly from the uncompleted government contract with the Department of Defense, Project Aegis." The name Project Aegis hung in the air like a thunderclap. This was the highly anticipated, multi-billion-dollar government contract that Leo had boasted about securing, promising a new era of profitability for Sterling. The board had been told it was merely quote, by bureaucratic red tape. Now, Serafina was implying something far more sinister. Douglas Hayes leaned forward, his face grim. "Serafina, you're making an incredibly serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I have a trail," she stated, sliding another, thicker folder across the table. "Transfers to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. Irregularities in the reported expenditures for Project Aegis. And a chilling pattern of Leo diverting funds into untraceable entities, meticulously disguised as legitimate business expenses. My forensic accountants believe these funds were never intended to be used for the contract, but rather for Leo's personal gain." As the board members began to flip through the documents, their initial skepticism rapidly turned to horrified realization. The financial trails were complex, designed to deceive, but Serafina's meticulous preparation and Marcus's legal team had uncovered enough to paint a damning picture. They saw the shell company names, the exorbitant sums, the dates that corresponded suspiciously with the stalled progress of Project Aegis. The very foundation of their trust in Leo, their celebrated CEO, began to crumble. "This is unconscionable," Rebecca Chen murmured, her face pale. "If this is true, the legal repercussions for Sterling Innovations could be devastating. Fraud, money laundering, breach of contract with the U.S. government." Her voice trailed off, the implications staggering. "Exactly," Serafina affirmed, "which is why I acted. To contain the damage. To prevent Leo from completely decimating everything we've all worked to build here." She looked around the table, meeting each director's gaze. "My actions were not out of vindictiveness, but out of necessity. To save this company from his ethical and legal breaches." The narrative of marital dispute evaporated, replaced by the grim reality of corporate malfeasance. The board, accustomed to Leo's charm and impressive salesmanship, was now confronted with the dark underbelly of his ambition. They saw not just a betrayed wife, but a strategic partner who had stepped in to prevent a cataclysm. Suddenly a side door to the boardroom opened, and a figure slipped in quietly, taking a seat at the back. It was Amelia Vance, the head of Sterling Innovations' legal department, a woman known for her quiet efficiency and unwavering loyalty to corporate compliance. She had been observing the meeting, unbidden by the board, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Serafina had a fleeting moment of surprise, then a knowing flicker of recognition. Amelia had always been a stickler for the rules, sometimes to Leo's irritation. If anyone in the company had suspected irregularities, it would have been her. Serafina gave her a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of their shared understanding. Amelia returned it, her expression solemn. The battle for Sterling Innovations had begun, and Serafina knew she now had an unexpected, yet powerful ally. The board was in a state of controlled chaos, their urgent whispers filling the room. Serafina allowed herself a small, grim smile. The first volley had landed, and Leo, wherever he was undoubtedly feeling the impact. The fight for financial redemption and justice had truly begun. The boardroom erupted into a cacophony of frantic discussion. Board members huddled in urgent consultations, their faces a mixture of disbelief, anger, and fear. The gravity of Serafina's accusations, backed by Marcus's meticulously compiled financial data, was undeniable. Richard Stone, still loyal to Leo, attempted to defend him, sputtering about Leo's long-standing dedication to the company, his unparalleled vision. "This is an attack," he insisted, his voice rising in exasperation. "A personal vendetta masked as a corporate crisis." "Personal vendetta?" Serafina's voice cut through the noise, calm and steady. "Mr. Stone, personal vendettas do not drain multi-million-dollar accounts and funnel them through offshore laundromats. Personal vendettas do not jeopardize government contracts critical to national security. My actions are not about revenge. They are about stopping a runaway train before it derails and destroys everyone on board." Her words resonated with the other board members, who were more concerned with potential criminal charges and stock market collapse than with Leo's reputation. Rebecca Chen, ever pragmatic, raised a crucial point. If these funds are indeed missing from the Project Aegis budget, and if the government discovers this malfeasance, the repercussions could be catastrophic. Not just fines, but blacklisting, forfeiture of future contracts, even criminal prosecution for the company itself. Douglas Hayes, regaining control of the room, slammed his gavel on the table. "Enough. This is clearly a matter requiring immediate and decisive action." He turned to Amelia Vance, Sterling Innovations' head of legal, who had remained a silent, observant presence at the back of the room. "Ms. Vance, you've heard the allegations, you've seen the preliminary documentation. What is your legal assessment?" Amelia, a woman whose quiet demeanor belied a steel-trapped mind, walked forward, her tablet in hand. "Mr. Hayes, based on the evidence presented and cross-referenced with internal audit flags I've identified over the past year, Mrs. Vance's claims appear to be highly credible. The, quote, irregularities in Project Aegis's budgeting that I flagged for Mr. Sterling's attention several months ago, and which were subsequently dismissed as, quote, proprietary reallocations, now make disturbing sense." Her words were delivered with a professional detachment that lent them immense weight. Amelia Vance was not an emotional actor. She dealt in facts and legal precedents. And her assessment was damning. "What internal audit flags?" Douglas Hayes demanded, his brow furrowing. "Why weren't these brought to the board's attention?" Amelia's gaze flickered briefly to where Richard Stone sat, then back to the chairman. "I attempted to schedule a comprehensive review with Mr. Sterling and the CFO on several occasions. Each time, the meeting was postponed or curtailed, with explanations citing, quote, sensitive negotiations or, quote, client confidentiality. Documentation of these attempts are in my reports." Her answer implied a systemic obfuscation, a deliberate effort by Leo to keep the board in the dark. Richard Stone visibly blanched. "This is an absolute nightmare," another director muttered, running a hand through his thinning hair. The full scope of Leo's betrayal, not just of his wife, but of his own company and its shareholders, was becoming horrifyingly clear. Serafina allowed a moment for the reality to sink in, then spoke again. "Gentlemen, Ms. Chen, this is not merely an accounting issue. This is a profound breach of trust, and it impacts Sterling Innovations' reputation, its relationships with critical partners like the Department of Defense, and its very future. The freeze on accounts, while painful in the short term, was a necessary tourniquet. Now we need a surgical solution." She then outlined the immediate steps her legal team had prepared: a voluntary disclosure to the Department of Defense regarding the potential discrepancies in Project Aegis's funding, a full internal audit led by an independent firm, and a comprehensive leadership restructuring. The final point hung heavy in the air. "Leadership restructuring?" Douglas Hayes echoed, his eyes narrowing. "Are you implying Leo's removal as CEO?" Given the magnitude of the financial irregularities, his unexplained disappearance, and the potential for criminal charges against the company, it would be irresponsible for him to remain at the helm, Serafina stated calmly. Moreover, with the accounts frozen and Project Aegis in jeopardy, The company needs a new interim leader with a clear understanding of its financial health and a commitment to transparency and compliance. Her proposal was met with a stunned silence. It was audacious, a direct challenge to Leo's authority and his meticulously crafted image. But as the implications sank in, the board began to see the logic. With Leo gone, someone needed to steer the ship, and Serafina, who had clearly done her homework, was presenting herself as the only viable option. "You're proposing yourself as interim CEO?" Rebecca Chin asked, a flicker of grudging respect in her eyes. "My priority is to stabilize Westlake and address the Artemis issues. Long-term leadership decisions can wait until we've navigated the immediate crisis." Serafina corrected, "My priority is to stabilize Sterling Innovations, salvage Project Aegis, and protect shareholder value. I will assume the role of interim CEO while a search committee identifies a permanent successor. This is not about personal ambition, it's about corporate survival." The distinction was crucial. She wasn't grabbing power for herself, she was stepping in to clean up Leo's mess. This positioned her not as a vindictive ex-wife, but as a reluctant savior. Richard Stone, still clinging to hope, interjected. "But Leo built this company from nothing. His vision is irreplaceable. This is a hasty decision, a reaction to an emotional crisis." "His vision," Amelia Vance interjected, cutting him off with a rare flash of anger, "appears to have included defrauding the U.S. government and potentially bankrupting this company. While his contributions are acknowledged, his current actions make his continued leadership untenable, both legally and ethically." Her words, sharp and final, sealed Leo's fate in the boardroom. The vote was called Bachatan. Douglas Hayes, with a heavy heart but a clear sense of duty, initiated the process. One by one, the board members cast their votes. Even Richard Stone, defeated, reluctantly abstained, rather than voting against the inevitable. The motion passed almost unanimously. Leo Sterling was officially removed as CEO of Sterling Innovations, effective immediately. Serafina Vance was appointed interim CEO. The silent partner, the woman who had always stood in Leo's shadow, had stepped into the light, ready to take the reins of the company he had abandoned and almost destroyed. She knew this was only the beginning of a long, arduous battle, but for the first time in weeks, Serafina felt a surge of defiant strength. The stage was set, the rules of engagement had changed, and Leo, wherever he was hiding, was about to discover the full, devastating force of Serafina's retribution. The news of Leo Sterling's abrupt removal as CEO of Sterling Innovations and Serafina's interim appointment sent shockwaves through the tech industry. The carefully crafted narrative of his brilliant leadership and their picture-perfect marriage evaporated overnight, replaced by a swirling vortex of rumors and speculation. Financial analysts speculated about the Intoir Weinentwort while industry insiders whispered about the true nature of Project Aegis's delays and the mysterious freeze on company accounts. Serafina knew this public storm was inevitable, a necessary evil to air out the rot that Leo had allowed to fester. Her first days as interim CEO were a blur of crisis management. She worked tirelessly, fueled by an adrenaline-laced determination to stabilize the company and restore its integrity. She held urgent meetings with department heads, reassuring nervous employees, and outlining a new commitment to transparency and ethical governance. With Amelia Vance by her side, Serafina initiated a comprehensive internal audit, ordering a full review of all financial transactions related to Project Aegis. They brought in an independent cybersecurity firm to scour Sterling Innovations networks for any hidden backdoors or planted malware that Leo might have left behind to sabotage the company further. Every corner of his former empire was being meticulously examined, every stone overturned. Amidst the frantic pace, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper reached Serafina's ears. A rumor, initially dismissed as gossip, but persistent enough to prick her attention. Leo, it was said, had been seen. Not in their usual haunts, not in any familiar city, but in a small, exclusive coastal town in Portugal. Cascais. The name itself felt like a mocking whisper on the wind, conjuring images of sun-drenched villas and discreet luxury. He hadn't just disappeared, he'd vanished into a new life, a new identity, far from the wreckage he'd left behind. The rumor gained traction through an unlikely source, a low-level assistant in Sterling's marketing department, a timid young woman named Chloe, who had always seemed terrified of Leo. One afternoon, during a company-wide town hall Serafina hosted, Chloe approached her nervously, clutching a small, crumpled piece of paper. "Mrs. Vance," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously around. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I saw something." Chloe explained that several weeks before Leo's disappearance, she'd been asked to organize a seemingly innocuous personal travel itinerary for him. It was unusual, as Leo's executive assistant usually handled such tasks. She'd found it odd, but complied. On the printout, meticulously taped to the back of the paper she handed Serafina, was a faded, grainy photograph. It was a picture of Leo, laughing arm in arm with a woman Serafina didn't recognize, both standing in front of what looked unmistakably like a villa in Cascais. The date stamp on the photo was from 6 months ago. Chloe also mentioned that she'd overheard Leo on a private call, several times, speaking in hushed tones about the new venture and securing our future, in a language that wasn't English but sounded like Portuguese. The photo, coupled with Chloe's whispered details, painted a devastatingly clear picture. This wasn't a recent, impulsive escape. This was a long-planned, meticulously executed betrayal. He had been building a new life, brick by brick, right under her nose, while draining their shared fortune. The woman in the photo was young, attractive, with bright, untroubled eyes. Serafina felt a familiar surge of cold anger, but also a strange sense of clarity. The mystery of his disappearance was finally unraveling. He wasn't in trouble. He was simply gone, replaced by a phantom in a foreign land. The next piece of the puzzle came from an even more unexpected source. Daniel, the head of Sterling Innovations' R&D department, a brilliant but socially awkward engineer, asked to speak with Serafina privately. He had always been fiercely loyal to his projects, almost pathologically so. "Mrs. Vance," he began, fidgeting with his glasses, "I need to show you something. It concerns Project Chimera." Project Chimera was Sterling's most cutting-edge AI initiative, a project Daniel had championed. Leo had always kept it under tight wraps, even from the board. Daniel revealed that several months ago, Leo had inexplicably demanded that certain critical algorithms, core to Project Chimera's intellectual property, be mirrored to a private server outside Sterling's network. He said it was a fail-safe, Mrs. Vance, a redundancy in case of a catastrophic data breach. But it felt wrong. It felt like he was taking pieces of Chimera out of the company. Daniel, in his quiet brilliance, had built a monitoring system for this mirrored server, an unseen sentinel tracking every data transfer. He showed Serafina the logs. What they revealed was chilling. For the past year, massive data packets, chunks of Project Chimera's source code, had been systematically uploaded to a cloud server whose IP address traced back to Cascais, Portugal. Leo wasn't just abandoning Sterling, he was stealing its most valuable intellectual property, presumably to launch a competing venture with the very funds he had siphoned from their joint accounts. Daniel, with his unassuming loyalty to the technology rather than the executive, had inadvertently provided the smoking gun. He was an unseen ally, a quiet witness to Leo's corporate theft. The realization sent a fresh wave of fury through Serafina. This wasn't just spousal abandonment and financial fraud. This was grand larceny, a blatant theft of Sterling Innovations' intellectual property. Leo was not merely setting up a new life. He was attempting to replicate Sterling's success, using stolen assets and stolen technology. This transformed her mission from merely recovering her personal wealth to protecting the very company he had founded. "Danielle," Serafina said, her voice firm, "thank you for your courage. This information is invaluable. We need to secure every single one of these data logs. Do not let anyone else know about this mirrored server or your monitoring system. This is our strategic advantage." As Daniel quietly prepared the evidence, Serafina felt a surge of renewed resolve. She now had not only the financial trail leading to Leo, but also evidence of his audacious plan to start a competing company with stolen funds and stolen technology. Portugal. The name echoed in her mind, no longer a whisper of mockery but a destination. She would track him down, expose his crimes, and dismantle his new empire before it even had a chance to truly begin. Her focus sharpened. The legal team's efforts would now expand to international jurisdiction, targeting not just his financial assets, but his stolen intellectual property. The game had just escalated, and Serafina, armed with the truth and unexpected allies, was ready to play. The revelation of Leo's stolen intellectual property, coupled with his new life in Portugal, galvanized Serafina and her team. The domestic legal battles over frozen accounts and asset forfeiture were just the beginning. Now, the war extended across continents. Marcus, her financial advisor, along with Sterling Innovations' legal team led by Amelia Vance, immediately initiated proceedings to secure international injunctions against Leo. This was a far more complex undertaking, involving navigating Portuguese and international law, working with Interpol, and tracing the labyrinthine pathways of offshore corporate structures. The good news, Amelia explained during a marathon video conference, is that intellectual property theft, especially involving a government contractor, is taken very seriously, both here and abroad. The U.S. Department of Justice and the Department of Defense will have a vested interest in this. The bad news is that Portugal, while a cooperative nation, has a different legal system. It's not as simple as freezing a bank account. We'll need irrefutable proof of the theft and a clear link between the stolen IP and any new venture Leo might be building there. Serafina provided Daniel's meticulously documented server logs showing the continuous, systematic upload of Project Chimera's code to the Portuguese cloud server. This was the smoking gun. He was building his new company with Sterling's crown jewels, she stated, her voice devoid of emotion, simply laying out the facts. He didn't just take our money, he took our future. The legal team began the arduous process of filing Mareva injunctions in Portugal, a form of freezing order designed to prevent assets from being moved out of the jurisdiction. They simultaneously prepared an international warrant for Leo's arrest, not just for the fraud against Serafina, but for corporate espionage and theft of intellectual property. The involvement of a government contract, Project Aegis, lent a heavy weight to their case, transforming a domestic dispute into a matter of international criminal concern. Meanwhile, Serafina focused on stabilizing Sterling Innovations. She personally reached out to the Department of Defense, explaining Leo's fraudulent activities regarding Project Aegis, and offering full cooperation in their investigation. Her transparency and decisive action, backed by Amelia Vance's legal expertise, began to rebuild trust. "We are deeply disturbed by these developments, Mrs. Vance," a stern Pentagon official conveyed during a secure video call. "But your proactive measures and willingness to open Sterling's books are noted. We will conduct our own parallel investigation, but for now, the Project Aegis contract is on hold, not terminated. You have a narrow window to prove Sterling's integrity." It was a tentative victory, but a victory nonetheless. The contract was not lost, only suspended, offering a glimmer of hope for the company's future. Word of Serafina's actions and the burgeoning scandal spread like wildfire through the global tech community. Leo, once celebrated as a visionary, was now being reviled as a fraudster. His carefully curated image, built on charisma and audacious promises, crumbled under the weight of mounting evidence. Serafina started receiving anonymous tips, emails, encrypted messages, even an old, crumpled business card slipped under her office door. Disgruntled former employees, former competitors, even some of Leo's disillusioned investors, all came forward with fragments of information, whispers of other shady deals, unverified funds, Leo's increasing paranoia in recent months. One particular tip came from a former business associate of Leo's, a man named Ricardo, who had briefly partnered with Sterling on an ill-fated venture years ago. Ricardo described a secret meeting he'd attended in Lisbon, several months prior, where Leo had been introduced to a shadowy network of facilitators who specialized in moving large sums of money discreetly across borders and establishing untraceable corporate entities. He dismissed it at the time as Leo just being Leo, always looking for an edge. Now, he realized it was the blueprint for Leo's escape. Ricardo's information provided Serafina's team with crucial names and shell company aliases that significantly aided their pursuit of Leo's hidden assets in Portugal. This network of unseen allies, fueled by a mixture of principle and personal resentment against Leo, proved invaluable. Armed with international arrest warrants and Morava injunctions, Serafina, accompanied by Marcus, Amelia, and two grim-faced U.S. Marshals, traveled to Cascais. The picturesque coastal town, with its sun-drenched villas and azure waters, seemed an idyllic backdrop for betrayal. They had tracked Leo to a sprawling, secluded property overlooking the Atlantic, a lavish sanctuary funded by stolen millions. It was the same villa from Chloe's grainy photograph. The Portuguese authorities, acting on the international warrants, moved swiftly. Leo was found lounging by an infinity pool, surrounded by opulence, the young woman from the photograph by his side. Her name, Serafina learned, was Sofia. She was a beautiful, vivacious Portuguese entrepreneur, apparently unaware of the true source of Leo's wealth or the sinister underpinnings of his new venture. When the police arrived, Leo's calm facade finally cracked, his eyes, usually so confident, filled with a fleeting moment of pure, unadulterated panic. "Serafina," he spluttered, his voice hoarse as he was handcuffed. "What is this? You can't possibly—" "I can, Leo," she cut him off, her voice steady and cold. "And I have. This isn't just about our accounts anymore. This is about Sterling Innovations. This is about Project Aegis. This is about fraud, embezzlement, and intellectual property theft. You didn't just leave me. You tried to dismantle everything we built and steal Sterling's future." Sofia, meanwhile, was in hysterics, utterly bewildered by the sudden raid. She pleaded with Leo, demanding an explanation, but he merely turned away, his face a mask of defeat and fury. As Leo was escorted away, Serafina ensured that Sofia was treated with sensitivity. It became clear that Sofia was a pawn, an unwitting participant in Leo's elaborate escape fantasy. She was, in essence, another victim of his deceit. The Portuguese authorities, in cooperation with the U.S. Marshals, secured the villa and began seizing assets. Inside, they found evidence beyond Serafina's wildest expectations: a fully operational data center mirroring Sterling Innovations' Project Chimera. Daniel's logs were confirmed. Leo had indeed been building a parallel company, a Sterling 2.0, powered by stolen algorithms. Financial documents confirmed the money laundering operation, funneling funds from Project Aegis, through the shell corporations Ricardo had warned them about, directly into Leo's personal accounts and the investments for his new venture. The villa itself was a testament to his hubris. A private jet on standby, a yacht docked in the nearby marina, luxury cars in the garage. Every symbol of his new, opulent life was a direct result of the wealth he had stolen. The evidence was overwhelming, incontrovertible. Leo's carefully constructed new world, built on lies and illicit gains, crumbled around him. As the authorities processed the scene, Serafina walked through the villa, a ghost in the very nightmare Leo had created. She saw the expensive art, the designer furniture, the infinity pool reflecting the endless blue sky. It was a beautiful prison, a gilded cage. And for the first time, seeing his empire of deceit exposed, she felt not triumph, but a profound sadness. The man she had loved, the ambitious visionary she had once believed in, was nothing but a hollow shell, corrupted by greed and a pathological need for control. The capture wasn't an ending, it was simply the painful confirmation of a complete and total betrayal, far deeper than she had initially imagined. Leo's arrest in Portugal ignited a media frenzy. The story of the visionary CEO turned international fugitive, accused of embezzling billions and stealing intellectual property, dominated headlines globally. Serafina, initially hesitant to be in the spotlight, found herself thrust into the role of the resolute wife who saved her husband's company from ruin. She chose to address the public directly, issuing a carefully worded statement through Sterling Innovations, emphasizing the company's commitment to transparency, ethical conduct, and full cooperation with authorities. Her calm, dignified demeanor, in stark contrast to Leo's dramatic downfall, garnered widespread admiration. The legal proceedings that followed were complex and protracted. Leo fought extradition, claiming the charges were a vindictive fabrication by a scorned wife. But the overwhelming evidence, supplied by Serafina's team and confirmed by the Portuguese authorities, made his defense crumble. The U.S. government, driven by the Project Aegis fraud, weighed in heavily, ensuring his return to face justice. Back in the U.S., Leo was indicted on multiple counts, including wire fraud, money laundering, and theft of trade secrets. His assets, both domestic and international, were systematically seized by the government to compensate Sterling Innovations and Serafina for the damages. The villa in Cascais, the private jet, the yacht, all liquidated to repay what he had stolen. The sheer scale of his deceit left the board of directors, once Leo's staunch supporters, utterly aghast. Many expressed profound regret for not having heeded Amelia Vance's earlier warnings. Serafina, meanwhile, focused relentlessly on rebuilding Sterling Innovations. The company had suffered a significant blow to its reputation and financial stability, but her decisive leadership and transparent communications slowly began to turn the tide. She appointed Amelia Vance as chief legal officer, acknowledging her critical role in uncovering Leo's misconduct. Daniel, the brilliant engineer, was promoted to head of innovation, given the resources and freedom to fully develop Project Chimera, now free from Leo's shadowy manipulations. The internal audit revealed that Leo's fraudulent activities extended beyond Project Aegis. He had siphoned smaller sums from other contracts, inflated expenses, and even created fictitious entities to launder money, slowly bleeding the company dry while maintaining an outward facade of unparalleled success. The audit also revealed that Leo had been attempting to sell off other minor Sterling Innovations patents, seemingly to convert them into untraceable cryptocurrency, further cementing his plan to disappear without a trace. Serafina, working closely with Amelia and Marcus, meticulously recovered these assets too, halting any further attempts at liquidation. The most challenging task was restoring trust with the Department of Defense. Serafina personally spearheaded negotiations, presenting a comprehensive plan for enhanced compliance, robust internal controls, and a complete overhaul of Sterling's ethical framework. Her unwavering commitment, coupled with the proven integrity of Project Chimera's original, non-stolen algorithms, eventually led to the reinstatement of Project Aegis, albeit with stringent oversight. It was a hard-won victory, signaling the company's slow but steady return to grace. In her personal life, the divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. Leo, facing criminal charges and overwhelming evidence, could offer little resistance. Serafina meticulously reclaimed her share of their marital assets, though the emotional cost was immeasurable. The joint accounts were slowly replenished, not by Leo's restitution, but by the legal process of asset recovery. The dream of their shared future, once so vivid, had been irrevocably shattered. Yet, as she signed the final divorce papers, Serafina felt not sadness, but a sense of profound liberation. She had not only survived, she had triumphed. She had reclaimed her financial autonomy and salvaged the company she helped build. Even amidst the whirlwind of corporate restructuring and legal battles, the personal toll of Leo's betrayal weighed heavily on Serafina. The public scrutiny was relentless. Every news cycle seemed to bring a fresh exposé, dissecting their marriage, questioning her knowledge of Leo's illicit activities, and speculating about her motives. Paparazzi, once a distant nuisance at charity galas, now camped outside her home, desperate for a glimpse of the, quote, betrayed wife turned corporate savior. It was an exhausting, invasive invasion of her grief. Her children, teenagers navigating their own turbulent years, were perhaps the most vulnerable to the fallout. They adored their father, the charismatic, successful CEO, who had always seemed larger than life. The news of his arrest, his alleged crimes, and the public humiliation was a devastating blow. Serafina found herself constantly balancing her need for transparency with the instinct to shield them from the uglier truths. She held long, tearful conversations with them, explaining in age-appropriate terms that their father had made terrible choices, that his actions were wrong, and that their family would get through this together. It was a painful and fragile process, but one she approached with unwavering honesty and love. Friends, too, reacted in varying ways. Some rallied around her with unwavering support, offering meals, childcare, and shoulders to cry on. Others, particularly those whose social lives were intertwined with Leo's professional circle, awkwardly distanced themselves, unsure how to navigate the new landscape. Serafina learned to discern true loyalty from fair-weather acquaintances, a painful but necessary lesson. Her core group of confidants, Anya, Marcus, Amelia, and Daniel, formed an unshakable inner circle, a source of strength and sanity in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. They celebrated her small victories and mourned with her over the quiet losses. The emotional impact often manifested in unexpected ways. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of press conferences and investor calls, Serafina found herself standing in Leo's empty closet, clutching one of his discarded shirts. The scent of his cologne, still faintly lingering, brought a wave of nausea and a sudden uncontrollable sob. It wasn't sadness for him, but a profound grief for the illusion she had lived, the years she had invested in a partnership built on deceit. She mourned the man she thought she had married, the shared dreams that had turned into a nightmare. The process of divorce, while a legal necessity, was also a deeply personal, unraveling, forcing her to confront not just Leo's actions, but her own blind spots, her own trusting nature. She sought therapy. Recognizing the need for professional guidance to process the trauma, her therapist helped her untangle the knots of grief, anger, and self-blame, gently guiding her towards acceptance and self-forgiveness. It was a slow, arduous process, akin to rebuilding a shattered vase, piece by fragile piece. But with each session, Serafina gained a deeper understanding of herself, her resilience, and the insidious nature of betrayal. She began to see that Leo's actions were not a reflection of her worth, but a devastating revelation of his own character. Public scrutiny also meant that every decision she made, both personal and professional, was analyzed under a magnifying glass. Her choice to stay in their family home, rather than sell it immediately, was interpreted by some as a sign of lingering sentimentality, by others as a calculated power move. Her dignified silence on Leo's personal life was applauded by some as class, criticized by others as evasiveness. Serafina learned to block out the noise, to focus on her own internal compass, trusting her instincts above external validation. The world might judge, but her conscience was clear, and her purpose, to restore Sterling's integrity, remained unwavering. With Leo's financial and legal entanglements being meticulously untangled, Serafina turned her full attention to the long-term health of Sterling Innovations. It was not enough to merely stop the bleeding. She had to rebuild the company from the ground up, instilling a culture of unwavering ethics and transparent governance that would prevent any future erosion of trust. Her approach was systematic, reflecting the meticulous planning that had characterized her silent contributions to their marriage. Her first major initiative was a sweeping corporate overhaul, starting from the top. She worked with the board to establish clear lines of authority and accountability, dismantling the centralized, opaque decision-making structure that Leo had cultivated to facilitate his fraud. Key positions were redefined, and new roles were created to enhance oversight and compliance. She brought in a new chief compliance officer, a seasoned veteran from a highly regulated industry, empowering them with direct reporting lines to the board and unparalleled authority to scrutinize all company operations. Serafina personally interviewed candidates for critical leadership roles, prioritizing individuals not just for their technical expertise, but for their demonstrated commitment to integrity and their willingness to challenge authority when necessary. She consciously sought out those who valued collaboration over cutthroat competition and who understood that long-term success was built on trust, not just profit. She restructured performance incentives, shifting away from purely short-term financial targets that could encourage risky behavior, and towards metrics that rewarded ethical conduct, innovation, and sustainable growth. Her most significant strategic alliance was with the U.S. Department of Defense. Recognizing that full transparency was their only path to restoring the multi-billion-dollar Project Aegis contract, Serafina initiated unprecedented levels of cooperation. She allowed DoD auditors unrestricted access to Sterling's financial records, internal communications, and development processes. She personally presented remediation plans, outlining how Sterling would rebuild its trust through enhanced security, stringent ethical training for all employees, and a zero-tolerance policy for fraud. It was a painstaking process, but her unwavering commitment, combined with Daniel's untainted Project Chimera breakthroughs, slowly began to win over the skeptical government officials. Mrs. Vance, a high-ranking DoD official conceded during a crucial meeting, "Your candor and your actions speak volumes. We've rarely seen a company take such proactive and comprehensive measures. While the shadow of Mr. Sterling's actions remains, your leadership is inspiring confidence." This was not just a diplomatic statement. It was a genuine recognition of Serafina's efforts. The Project Aegis contract, initially put on hold, was gradually reinstated, piece by piece, as Sterling demonstrated its renewed trustworthiness. This restoration was a powerful symbol, not just financially but ethically, sending a clear message to the industry: integrity could be rebuilt. Serafina also focused on internal communication, holding regular town halls and open-door sessions to keep employees informed and engaged. She addressed their anxieties head-on, acknowledging the trauma and uncertainty that Leo's actions had caused. She fostered a culture where employees felt safe to voice concerns, instituting anonymous reporting channels, and ensuring that all ethics inquiries were rigorously investigated without fear of retaliation. This created a powerful internal alliance, turning every employee into a potential guardian of the company's newfound principles. She understood that the corporate culture was the ultimate defense against future misconduct. She invested in training programs focused on ethical decision-making, not just compliance, encouraging employees to think critically about the implications of their actions. She revived old traditions of company-wide brainstorming sessions for innovation, reminiscent of Sterling's garage startup days, encouraging a sense of shared purpose and collective ownership that had been lost under Leo's autocratic rule. Her strategic vision extended beyond just fixing past mistakes. She pushed for new, ethically driven projects that aligned with Sterling's core competencies, emphasizing innovation that benefited society rather than merely maximizing profit. She initiated partnerships with academic institutions for joint research, promoting open-source contributions in select areas to foster trust and collaboration within the tech community. Serafina was not just leading Sterling out of a crisis. She was charting a course for its future, one where ethical leadership and cutting-edge innovation were inextricably linked. Under Serafina's unwavering guidance, Sterling Innovations truly became the phoenix rising from the ashes of betrayal. The company's financial stability, once teetering on the brink, steadily climbed back, driven by restored confidence from investors and the unwavering dedication of its reinvigorated workforce. But it was Project Chimera, the very intellectual property Leo had tried to steal, that became the gleaming symbol of Sterling's resurgence and its renewed commitment to ethical innovation. Daniel, now officially the Chief Technology Officer, poured his heart and soul into Project Chimera. Liberated from Leo's demands for unethical shortcuts and secretive redundancies, Daniel and his team refined the AI algorithms with meticulous care, focusing on transparency, accountability, and the ethical implications of their technology. They implemented robust internal auditing protocols for the AI's decision-making processes, ensuring explainability and fairness, a stark contrast to the opaque, manipulated data Leo had favored. This commitment to ethical AI development set Sterling apart in an increasingly complex industry. When Project Chimera officially launched its next phase, the reception was overwhelmingly positive. Industry critics, initially skeptical given the scandal, lauded Sterling's courage and commitment to rebuilding trust through demonstrable integrity. The AI's performance exceeded expectations, not just in its core function, but in its robust ethical safeguards, becoming a model for responsible technology. Sales soared, new contracts poured in, and Sterling Innovations, once synonymous with Leo's fraud, was now celebrated as a leader in ethical innovation. Serafina ensured that the narrative of Project Chimera's restoration was widely publicized. She personally participated in industry conferences, speaking passionately about the importance of ethical frameworks in technological development. She showcased Daniel's team, crediting their unwavering dedication and scientific integrity as the true backbone of the project's success. This deliberate shift in focus, from one individual's questionable genius to a team's collective ethical excellence, resonated deeply with both employees and the public. The restoration extended beyond technology. Serafina prioritized employee well-being, introducing comprehensive wellness programs, flexible work arrangements, and transparent bonus structures. She fostered a culture where mistakes were seen as learning opportunities, not reasons for fear or blame. Morale, once at an all-time low during the height of the scandal, blossomed into a vibrant sense of pride and shared purpose. Employees, many of whom had considered leaving during the crisis, now spoke of Sterling as a place where they felt valued, respected, and ethically aligned. Financially, the company not only recovered the funds stolen by Leo, but also began to exceed previous revenue targets. The legal victories against Leo, coupled with the success of Project Chimera and the renewed Project Aegis contract, replenished Sterling's coffers. Serafina meticulously oversaw the re-establishment of robust financial controls, ensuring that every dollar spent was accounted for and aligned with the company's ethical mission. She implemented state-of-the-art fraud detection systems and engaged independent auditors for quarterly reviews, leaving no stone unturned in her quest to protect Sterling from any future internal threats. The restoration of Sterling Innovations' reputation was perhaps Serafina's greatest triumph. Once tainted by scandal, the company became a model for how a corporation could not only survive a profound ethical crisis but emerge stronger, wiser, and more principled. Competitors began to emulate Sterling's new compliance standards, and aspiring entrepreneurs looked to Serafina's leadership as an example of how to build a business with integrity at its core. She had proven that ethical conduct was not just a moral imperative, but a strategic advantage, a foundation for sustainable, long-term success. Just as Sterling Innovations seemed to have fully navigated the storm, an unforeseen obstacle emerged. A final, desperate tremor from the earthquake Leo had caused. A powerful, old-money institutional investor, Prosperity Capital, which held a significant minority stake in Sterling, suddenly launched a hostile campaign. Led by its notoriously aggressive CEO, Arthur Blackburn, Prosperity Capital began publicly questioning Serafina's leadership, alleging, quote, lingering instability and overly cautious growth strategies that were supposedly stifling shareholder returns. Blackburn, a man with a reputation for corporate rating, saw an opportunity. He argued that Serafina, despite her successes, was too emotionally involved, too focused on moral crusades, referring to the ethics initiatives and the Phoenix Fund, rather than pure profit maximization. He called for an extraordinary general meeting of shareholders, demanding a vote of no confidence in the current board and Serafina's interim CEO role, with the ultimate goal of installing his own hand-picked management team. It was a thinly veiled attempt to seize control of the newly stabilized, profitable Sterling Innovations. Serafina recognized Blackburn's tactics immediately. This wasn't about ethical concerns. It was about greed, a calculated move to capitalize on the company's recent vulnerability. Blackburn shrewdly leveraged the initial stock dip caused by the scandal, arguing that Serafina's recovery plan was too slow, too focused on long-term ethical integrity over immediate, aggressive profitability. His narrative, disseminated through a network of financial bloggers and sympathetic analysts, began to sow seeds of doubt among some shareholders who had bought into Sterling during its post-scandal recovery, hoping for a quick, massive return. The attack was relentless and personal. Blackburn's proxies subtly hinted at Serafina's lack of traditional CEO experience, emphasizing her background as Leo's wife and philanthropic director, attempting to undermine her hard-won authority. He even managed to dredge up old, minor financial disputes from Leo's distant past, attempting to paint a picture of systemic, family-level financial irresponsibility that would tarnish Serafina by association. It was a vicious, cynical tactic designed to discredit her and scare off shareholders. Serafina, though initially disheartened by this fresh wave of adversity, refused to buckle. She had faced down far greater betrayals. This was a challenge to her leadership, but more importantly, to the very values she had painstakingly instilled in Sterling Innovations. She convened an emergency meeting with Marcus, Amelia, and Daniel. "Blackburn is playing dirty," she stated, her jaw set. "He wants to undo everything we've built, to strip Sterling of its soul for a quick buck. We won't let him." Her team rallied around her. Amelia Vance meticulously dissected Blackburn's legal arguments, identifying loopholes and preparing countermotions. Marcus worked tirelessly with Sterling's largest institutional investors, reminding them of Serafina's proven track record of restoring stability and preventing a complete collapse. Daniel, with his quiet intensity, presented compelling data on Project Chimera's long-term revenue projections, demonstrating that ethical innovation, though perhaps slower initially, delivered far more sustainable and substantial returns than Blackburn's proposed short-sighted strategies. Serafina personally spearheaded the counter-campaign. She organized a series of direct video calls with key shareholders, bypassing the media noise orchestrated by Blackburn. In these calls, she spoke with a quiet passion and unwavering conviction. She didn't just present numbers. She told Sterling's story: the betrayal, the arduous journey of rebuilding, the commitment to ethical AI, and the promise of a future where integrity was the ultimate competitive advantage. She reminded them that Blackburn's tactics were precisely the kind of short-sighted, profit-at-all-costs mentality that had led to Leo's downfall in the first place. The most powerful moment came during a live, televised shareholder forum orchestrated by Blackburn's team, intended to expose Serafina's supposed weaknesses. Blackburn hammered her with aggressive questions about profitability, market share, and her sentimental focus on ethics. Serafina listened patiently, then responded calmly. "Mr. Blackburn, you ask about profit. I ask about principle. Leo Sterling maximized short-term profit at the cost of long-term integrity, almost destroying this company. I am building a foundation of integrity that will secure Sterling's profitability for generations. I ask you, which path serves true shareholder value?" Her words, delivered with quiet conviction, resonated deeply. She wasn't just defending herself, she was defending Sterling's soul. The voting results for the extraordinary general meeting were a resounding victory for Serafina. Blackburn's motion was overwhelmingly rejected, and the board, including Serafina, received an overwhelming vote of confidence. Blackburn, his aggressive tactics foiled, was forced to retreat, his hostile takeover attempt a humiliating failure. Serafina had faced down the ghosts of the past and the predators of the present, proving that her resilience and ethical leadership were not just a response to crisis, but the very essence of her power. With Sterling Innovations firmly on a path of ethical growth and financial stability, Serafina began to shift her focus, deepening her commitment to the causes that resonated most deeply with her. The Phoenix Fund, her philanthropic initiative born from the ashes of her own financial betrayal, grew exponentially, transforming from a modest project into a nationally recognized beacon of hope for victims of corporate and financial fraud. Serafina immersed herself in the fund's mission, going beyond ceremonial appearances to engage directly with its beneficiaries. She spearheaded fundraising campaigns, captivating audiences with her personal story of resilience, and attracting substantial contributions from other ethical corporations and compassionate philanthropists. The fund expanded its services, offering not only pro bono legal aid for asset recovery but also comprehensive financial literacy programs, psychological counseling for trauma recovery, and vocational training to help victims rebuild their lives and careers. She often met with individuals whose stories echoed her own: elderly couples swindled out of their retirement savings, small business owners defrauded by unscrupulous partners, families whose lives were shattered by similar acts of corporate or personal deceit. Listening to their experiences, offering a sympathetic ear, and sharing her own journey of recovery, Serafina found a profound sense of purpose. She wasn't just managing money, she was rebuilding lives, piece by painful piece. Her quiet empathy, coupled with her razor-sharp strategic mind, made her an incredibly effective advocate. She fought for stronger consumer protections, lobbied for stricter penalties against white-collar criminals, and became a vocal champion for ethical accountability in the financial sector. Beyond the Phoenix Fund, Serafina's stature as a mentor and thought leader in ethical business grew organically. She received invitations to speak at prestigious universities, deliver keynote addresses at global economic forums, and serve on advisory boards for ethical governance initiatives. She accepted selectively, choosing opportunities where her voice could have the greatest impact. Her message was consistent. True leadership transcended profit margins. It was rooted in integrity, transparency, and a profound sense of responsibility to employees, shareholders, and society at large. She became a particularly influential mentor to young professionals, especially women, who sought her guidance in navigating the complexities of corporate power. She shared candidly about the subtle signs of ethical compromise she had missed in Leo, the importance of trusting one's intuition, and the courage required to speak truth to power. She encouraged them to build strong networks of allies, to prioritize their integrity, and to never underestimate their own quiet strength. Many of her mentees went on to hold significant leadership positions, carrying Serafina's principles into their own careers, creating a ripple effect of ethical influence across various industries. Serafina also found a new passion for exploring the intersection of technology and ethics. She actively engaged with researchers at Sterling Innovations and other institutions, delving into the responsible development of AI, data privacy, and the societal impact of emerging technologies. Her background in finance, coupled with her experience in unraveling Leo's tech-driven fraud, gave her a unique perspective on the ethical dilemmas of the digital age. She became a strong advocate for responsible innovation, arguing that technological progress must always be guided by moral principles. Her relationship with Daniel and Amelia, forged in the fires of crisis, continued to be a cornerstone of her life. They often met for quiet dinners, sharing insights, challenges, and the occasional dry humor about the absurdity of the corporate world. Marcus remained her steadfast financial advisor and friend, witnessing her personal and professional evolution with immense pride. Serafina had built a new family, not of blood but of shared values and an unshakable commitment to integrity. In her personal life, the quiet happiness she had cultivated deepened. The man she was now dating, a kind-hearted historian named Elias, understood her need for purpose and respected her journey. He brought a sense of calm and intellectual curiosity to her life, a refreshing contrast to the turbulent ambition of her past. They shared quiet evenings, meaningful conversations, and a mutual appreciation for simple joys. Serafina learned to trust again, cautiously but completely, embracing a future built on genuine connection and shared values. The bitterness had long faded, replaced by a profound sense of peace and a clarity of purpose that illuminated her path forward. The time had come. After years of unwavering dedication to Sterling Innovations, ensuring its complete restoration and solidifying its ethical foundation, Serafina made her final, pivotal decision regarding her role within the company. With Daniel firmly established as CEO, leading Sterling to new heights of ethical innovation, and the Ethics and Integrity Board thriving under strong new leadership, Serafina felt a profound sense of completion. She announced her decision to step down from her formal advisory roles at Sterling, confident that the company was on a trajectory of sustainable, principled growth. Her farewell address to the Sterling Innovations team was delivered with characteristic humility and warmth. She spoke not of her own triumphs, but of the collective resilience of the employees, the unwavering dedication of Daniel and Amelia, and the shared commitment to Kenneth Westlake's, the original story's founder, principles of integrity. "Sterling is more than a company," she said, her voice clear and resonant. "It is a testament to what we can achieve when we choose integrity, even in the face of betrayal. You are its future, and I have no doubt you will continue to illuminate the path forward." Her departure from Sterling was amicable, celebrated, and filled with genuine gratitude from the board, employees, and industry peers. It wasn't an exit into retirement, but a purposeful redirection of her formidable energy. Serafina devoted herself fully to the Phoenix Fund, expanding its global reach and launching ambitious new initiatives to combat financial fraud on a systemic level. She established partnerships with international law enforcement agencies, financial regulatory bodies, and NGOs, working to strengthen legal frameworks and provide support to victims across borders. Her work transformed countless lives, pulling individuals and families out of the despair of financial ruin. Her personal life flourished. The colonial home, once a symbol of a shattered past, became a cherished sanctuary. She sold it eventually, not out of escape but out of a desire for a new beginning, choosing a sunlit property overlooking a quiet lake, a place of peace and reflection. Elias, the historian, became her steadfast companion, sharing her quiet evenings, her passion for learning, and her commitment to making a positive impact on the world. Their relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect, intellectual curiosity, and a shared appreciation for authenticity. Serafina embraced new challenges, learning new languages, traveling to remote corners of the world to support philanthropic projects, and even taking up a new artistic pursuit that allowed her to express the complex emotions she had processed. She published a memoir, a deeply personal and surprisingly candid account of her journey, from betrayal to resilience, offering lessons on corporate ethics, personal recovery, and the unwavering power of integrity. The book became a bestseller, inspiring millions with its message of hope and transformation. She occasionally heard news of Leo, fragments filtered through legal channels or old acquaintances. He was out of prison now, a shadow of his former self, struggling to find relevance in a world that had moved on. His name carried no weight, his charisma long evaporated. Serafina felt no malice, only a quiet understanding of the natural consequences of his choices. He had built an empire on sand, and it had crumbled. As Serafina looked out at the tranquil lake from her new home, she reflected on the incredible journey. What had begun as a devastating personal betrayal, her husband leaving her and draining their accounts, had, in fact, been the catalyst for her profound transformation. She had been forced to confront the darkest aspects of human nature, but in doing so had discovered her own immense strength, her unwavering moral compass, and a purpose far greater than she could have ever imagined. She was no longer defined by what was taken from her, but by what she had built, reclaimed, and given back to the world. The future remained unwritten, filled with possibilities. Serafina Vance, the quiet force who had once stood in her husband's shadow, had forged an extraordinary legacy built on resilience, integrity, and a profound commitment to justice. She had not only survived, she had truly thrived, proving that sometimes the greatest victories bloom from the deepest betrayals, and that the strongest foundations are built on the unshakable bedrock of one's own truth. She was free, she was whole, and her story, a testament to enduring strength, would continue to inspire for generations to come. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.